My beloved brothers and sisters, before you move on, before your attention is pulled back into the noise of the world, I ask you to remain with me for a moment. Because what we are about to contemplate is not merely an ancient story written for another people and another time. It is a revelation of how God still acts today, even when human eyes fail to see. There was a day when God sent an army of angels to protect his prophet. And that same unseen protection continues to surround the faithful in every generation. Many believers struggle not with disbelief, but with discouragement. They pray, yet danger remains. They serve God, yet opposition grows. They remain faithful, yet the world seems stronger, louder, and more violent. In those moments, the temptation is to believe that heaven is distant, that God is silent, or that faith leaves us exposed. Scripture answers this temptation not with abstract philosophy, but with a vivid, unforgettable truth. God never abandons those he calls. When human strength ends, divine protection begins. One of the most powerful testimonies of this truth is found in the life of the prophet Elisha. Surrounded by enemies, outnumbered, hunted, and seemingly defenseless, Elisha stood calm while fear overwhelmed those around him. His servant, seeing the enemy army encircling the city, cried out in panic. The threat was real, the danger was visible, yet Elisha's response revealed a deeper reality. He prayed not for escape, but for sight. Lord, open his eyes so that he may see. And when the servant's eyes were opened, he beheld the mountain filled with horses and chariots of fire, an army of angels sent by God to protect his prophet. This moment is not just about Elisha. It is about how heaven operates. God's protection does not always remove danger. Sometimes it reveals that danger was never in control. The angelic army did not arrive at the last second. It had been there all along. The servant simply could not see it. This is a lesson our modern world desperately needs. We are trained to believe that only what is visible is real. If we cannot measure it, record it, or display it, we dismiss it. Yet Scripture repeatedly teaches us that the most decisive battles are fought in the unseen realm. Angels are not decorative symbols of comfort, they are active agents of God's providence throughout sacred Scripture. Angels appear at moments of extreme vulnerability. They guard the Garden of Eden, guide Israel through the desert, protect Daniel in the lion's den, strengthen Christ in his agony, and proclaim the resurrection. Their presence signals not the absence of danger, but the presence of divine authority. When God sends angels, he is not reacting in panic, he is executing his will as a priest. I have witnessed moments when logic alone could not explain survival, peace, or endurance. I remember visiting a missionary who had been threatened repeatedly for preaching the gospel. Armed men had surrounded his village. Escape was.
This audio is synthesized using AI technology from vb.vn.
Impossible. That night, instead of fleeing, the community prayed. The following morning, the attackers had vanished without explanation. No shots were fired. No confrontation occurred. The missionary later told me, "Father, it felt as if something stood between us and them." Faith does not claim to explain every mystery, but it recognizes patterns. God still protects his servants in ways that defy human calculation. The story of God sending angels to protect his prophet teaches us three essential truths. First, God's protection is real even when unseen. Second, fear is often born from spiritual blindness rather than actual defeat. Third, prayer aligns us with divine reality rather than changing God's will. Elisha did not pray for the enemy to disappear. He prayed for his servant to see correctly. This distinction is crucial. Many believers pray for circumstances to change when God desires first to change perception. When we see with eyes of faith, we discover that we are not as alone as we imagined. This truth finds its fulfillment in the mission of Jesus Christ. When Christ stood before his accusers, abandoned by his disciples and surrounded by hostile power, he declared that he could call upon legions of angels if he wished. He did not do so, not because the angels were absent, but because his sacrifice served a greater redemptive purpose. Even in apparent defeat, heaven remained attentive. This reminds us that angelic protection does not always mean immediate rescue. Sometimes it means strength to endure, courage to remain faithful, or peace that surpasses understanding. God's army does not exist to guarantee comfort, but to safeguard God's plan in our own lives. We often stand like Elisha's servant, overwhelmed by what we see, convinced that danger has already won. Anxiety, illness, persecution, and uncertainty can feel like surrounding armies. Yet Scripture invites us to pray the same prayer: Lord, open my eyes. Faith does not deny reality, it reveals a deeper one. I once counseled a young man who felt crushed by fear for his family's future. Economic instability, illness, and conflict surrounded him. He told me, "Father, I feel exposed." Through prayer and reflection, he slowly learned to entrust what he could not control. Years later, he returned and said, "Nothing became easier, but I became stronger." That is often how angelic protection manifests, not by removing the battle, but by ensuring it does not destroy us. The angels who protected Elisha did not strike the enemy down immediately. Instead, God blinded the attackers and led them away without bloodshed. This reveals another profound truth: divine power is restrained by divine wisdom. God protects not to humiliate, but to redirect. Even enemies are not beyond mercy. This challenges our desire for dramatic intervention. We want visible victory, public vindication, and immediate justice. God often chooses quiet deliverance. Angels work silently, precisely, and effectively.
Create professional voiceovers with VB.VN.
Their mission is not spectacle, but obedience. The modern believer must reclaim this understanding. When faith is mocked, when morality is pressured, when truth is attacked, it is tempting to believe that darkness is winning. Yet Scripture assures us that heaven does not lose control simply because it does not announce its moves. The army of angels sent to protect God's prophet reminds us that spiritual authority outweighs numerical strength. One faithful servant aligned with God's will stands stronger than armies driven by fear and pride. Angels respond not to power, but to obedience. As we approach the end of this reflection, we must ask ourselves an honest question: where do we place our confidence? In visible strength or invisible faith? In human strategy or divine providence? The answer shapes how we face fear. The lesson of this story is not that believers will never suffer, but that they will never be abandoned. God's protection does not always appear as escape. Sometimes it appears as endurance, wisdom, or peace. Angels do not replace our responsibility, but they guard our mission. In the final chapter of history, Scripture tells us that angels will again stand visibly at God's command. They will gather the faithful, separate truth from falsehood, and bear witness to divine justice. The same God who protected his prophet in silence will reveal his power in glory. My brothers and sisters, do not measure your safety by what you see. Measure it by who has called you. Live faithfully, pray sincerely, and trust that heaven is far more active than you imagine. When fear surrounds you, remember Elisha's prayer. Ask God to open your eyes, because even now, unseen by the world, an army of angels stands ready, not to glorify themselves, but to protect those who belong to God.
Create professional voiceovers with VB.VN.